if you Google Jim Varney, he's got like this ruggedly handsome thing going on. It's just like, who the fuck's that guy? Oh.
Well, at least we know that he lived his life in earnest.
From the darkest pits of my soul, I hate you.
Oh, Lord. All right, let's get this over with. Damn it.
You're still laughing about that, aren't you?
That's so good.
It's not. No, stop it.
This is Epic Battle Cry Skirmish 175! Thanks for reading!
Hello and welcome to Epic Battle Cry. This is the place where we cut through the crap to bring you the real deal in the gaming industry today. I'm your host, Tony Grice, and with me we have some festive fellows. We have Brent Adams and Daniel Kaiser. Brent, how you doing this week, man?
What's up, my helpers of hellfire, my reindeers of ransacking? How art thou?
Very different vision of...
Not what Christmas is about.
What?
Whoa,
Reindeers of ransacking. Helpers, little tiny helpers of hellfire. I like it. Even Brent can be festive this time of year.
That wasn't festive.
Well,
That was festive as all fucking get out. What are you talking about?
kind of was.
DK, what about you?
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas, biatches. I hope everybody out there is having a good holiday season. And
It was up till then.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm preparing for some snow here in Denver, and I can't wait for it to come down so I can go outside and go sledding with the kids. Woohoo! Hot chocolate. It's going to be fun.
I feel like you've eaten a lot of yellow snow in your life. I don't know if it's...
The word you're looking for is mushrooms, Tony, and there's a difference. An important difference.
Very
Santa's
true.
going to love the cookies in Colorado. Have I already said that?
Twice.
Oh, that's true.
All right, well, we've got plenty of kind of interesting stories coming this week, so let's go ahead and run through the gauntlet.
Gauntlet!
All right, guys, we're here in the gauntlet, and the first bit of news we've got up here is apparently there are people out there that are still playing Star Wars: The Old Republic. And I guess they want a few more people playing because they're announcing an expansion. Brent, you want to tell us a little bit about what we can expect?
You know what? I am immune to your disdain when it comes to SWOTOR. And I'll tell you why. Because SWOTOR, despite all of your criticism, was actually a pretty damn good game. And I'm sorry that it's had a rough year, but despite the fact that it's gone through some tumultuous times, going from a paid MMO to a free-to-play MMO, and all of the difficulty that has arisen
Apparently
out of
back to
that
a paid MMO.
out of that transition, we are getting word now on the first expansion for the game, the first paid expansion for the game, which is called Rise of the Hutt Cartel. It is set to come out in spring 2013. It is going to be available as a digital download for $19.99, and it will be half off, just $10, if you're a paid subscriber at that time. New features are going to include a planet, Makeb, level cap bump to 55, new story content with fully voiced cinematics, new gear, skill points, and abilities. BioWare is also going to be giving pre-order customers 5 days of early access to the new stuff if you pre-order by January 7th. And we'll have even more details about this, BioWare tells us, over the coming week. So,
Any details of anyone else still playing the game? So that
I'd like to turn the
matter.
discussion over to Daniel now. And
Well,
I never
yeah, I mean, this
thought
is
I'd be happy to say
obviously,
that.
it's been a full year. We should note, I think almost to the day. The game came out on like the 20th or something, I believe, of 2011. So here we are a full year later, and something we'll probably talk about in the main topics about the biggest stories of the year. But, this is interesting that the first official expansion is coming out. They're raising the level cap, and, that they're making it fit within the various models so that, you could pick it up for half the price if you're, as you outlined, Brent, there, that, you could access this on many levels. But again, to address kind of Tony's cynicism, I don't know that this is going to be something that that gets new people on board? Is it bringing anything so exciting into the fray that people who haven't already come on board with what SWTOR is offering are going to decide to do so based on this expansion? I don't see any reason why they would. And again, this is great for the people who love this game, but to my understanding from the several MMO people that I talk to, enthusiasts of that genre, that this game has kind of fallen short of those expectations. So, more power to everyone who loves this game and wants to enjoy it, and I think it's great that they're sticking with it and making an expansion, but I don't know if any fence sitters are going to, jump over.
Yeah, I don't think this is probably even for the fence sitters. I think, if anything, this is just to keep the people that are still playing the game. So, it's I was being a little bit harsh to it. The game, I think had some potential, but I don't know what it was. Just I don't think it ever quite garnered the excitement that people hoped for from it. So, who knows? Maybe down the road they might revamp it significantly to the point where it may become more popular.
I think honestly the problem with it is that everybody expected SWTOR to be at feature parity with World of Warcraft the day that it came out. I think that people had, in some cases, not in all cases, but I think in some cases people had unreasonably high expectations for how evolved that game should be at launch. And if you look at where they were when they started and where they were and where they are now, they have really, really tried to evolve that game quickly over the course of the first year and really, really up the feature set. There's more work to be done, but I really feel that a lot of people's problem with the game is they were expecting, like, well, why can't I do this? Why can I do this? Why can I do this? And it's like, World of Warcraft didn't get those features for like 4 years.
Yeah.
And I'm not, like, I understand that, that they've got to compete with whatever's out there, and that that's totally a valid point. But I do think that sometimes, people kind of forgot to take into account the fact that, they were sort of comparing a game that was 6 months into launch with a game that was, years into its life cycle.
There's a difference, though, in expecting features from a game that's been out. Like, if it's something that, like, could not have been built. Like, let's say that's just the world, the amount of people on there. Okay, that, takes time to build. But features that they could have just looked at the game that's doing really well and said, hey, let's implement those things over here. Like, I think that is a little different. I don't think maybe expectations were too out of the realm of possibility to expect maybe a little bit more for the game. But I also think, personally, that this comes more from the game, or the fact that the game, I think, was taken from more of a single player experience and fleshed out into a MMO, and I think that has always kind of had a feeling of like it wasn't necessarily always really meant to be a great MMO from word one, but I don't know.
Has fully voiced characters. So
that's definitely worth looking at. All right, so
thank you for that bit of insight.
Thank you for that bit of info, DK. All right, so the next bit of news we have out is a little bit of sad news if you're a Call of Duty fan, which
or good news.
Nobody.
Yeah, I was going to say
this podcast.
I don't know about that, but
but DK, what kind of news do we have around the Call of Duty franchise maybe moving to the big screen?
Call of Duty is so freaking huge that you would expect it would have a movie by now. I mean, we all know Call of Duty is like one of the biggest franchises in gaming. It has, it sticks to its yearly release cycle. These are gaming events when the game comes out, and it's huge. And of course, it is under the stewardship of one Bobby Kotick over at Activision, who has made no bones about the fact that he wants to sell the living hell out of it. But Bobby was apparently drunk when he did an interview with the New York Times profiling his somewhat controversial role in the gaming community, and he did say this little tidbit, which may come across as, why, or also like, holy cow, that's actually kind of nice. He said this: Call of Duty may look like a movie, but this is what he says: the movies based on video games rarely please devoted fans, and making a movie of Call of Duty could taint the brand. Interesting that he's actually concerned with the quality of the brand's appeal based on how oversaturated it is. But this is a game, though, after we already know, we've seen gaming movies from everything like Tomb Raider to Resident Evil to Prince of Persia, and Assassin's Creed is in the works, and Splinter Cell as well. Don't you think Call of Duty seems like the easy one to make a movie about? Because, I mean, the plot lines kind of go all over the place, and there are, ties that bind things together, but don't you think Call of Duty, with its mass appeal, probably would have made for a good movie? And do you think that we'll ever actually see it, or is Bobby going to stick to his guns here and ensure that it stays in the realm of interactive entertainment?
I'm not sure about any of that. I am sure about one thing, and that is I could go my entire life and I never want to hear the words Bobby Kotick and taint in the same sentence ever again. Having said that, it is ironic that Bobby Kotick talks about how it talks about not wanting to do things that might displease devoted fans or could muck up the brand, seeing as how there have been plenty of times in the past where he has, let's just say, made statements and decisions that have led me to conclude that he doesn't give a fuck about fans or brand quality or any of those things. So it's kind of interesting to get some insight into what Bobby Kotick think constitutes brand dilution.
Yeah, I don't know. I almost take a little bit of disagreeing with you on that. I don't necessarily think the guy personally cares about the product itself. Like in terms of he doesn't really. I don't think he probably doesn't play the game, doesn't have any interest in it. Just all he cares about is protecting the investment of Call of Duty.
Bobby Kotick hates games. I mean, we know this.
Yes, well, and that's what I was gonna say. But he does care about making money and about his company being profitable. And I gotta be honest, for all the people out there that just kind of constantly give Activision crap about basically just selling the crap out of their properties and not giving a damn about it. It is a little interesting that this would be maybe the easiest thing for them to cash in on, because let's be honest, they wouldn't even have anything to do with the production of it probably, or
Sure.
very little in terms of the overall production. They'd kind of be like advisors or something like that to it.
Well, and considering the people that they bring into their commercials, to direct and star in their commercials, and I mean, I think it's a different story if you're talking about Mass Effect or Red Dead Redemption or a game that means something story wise, and then you just blow it up onto the big screen. You're not saying that Call of Duty doesn't mean anything story wise, but that audience seems like the type of audience that would go to a film about that franchise.
Well, exactly. I kind of think they would, and also I kind of think that how could that really tarnish the brand in general? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's not got these characters that taint the brand. It's not like they have these characters that are consistent across every one of the stories that are. That they don't have these things that could really hurt it. If it were to hurt it, just the next year they could just totally turn around and go a different direction with it, and I don't think anybody would care. Totally. The least. So I don't know. I don't really find it hey, that's a great statement. He's sticking to the brand and he's not tarnishing it. Or hey, this guy's an idiot. He should be doing it. I just find it weird. I almost agree with Daniel. God forbid that he might have been drunk during this interview and just not know what he was saying. This does not jive with anything that he does.
Well, there's so many possibilities. I could so easily foresee a situation where he gets off the phone with a studio executive in Hollywood and they're like, listen, we don't want to make a fucking movie out of your murder simulator, and then hangs up on him, and Bobby Kotick's immediately writing a press release. I wouldn't want to make a movie out of this game anyway.
That's
good.
Totally.
So you never know exactly what's going on in Bobby Kotick's mind.
That's a very good point.
Isn't that a movie?
All right. All right, so the next bit of news, we get a few more details around the recently announced Dark Souls 2. Brent, you want to tell us a little bit about what we can expect from the title?
Absolutely. So the team working on Dark Souls 2 spoke to Edge Magazine and showed them a demo, and from that we've gotten some new facts about the game. So here's the rundown. It's been in development since September of last year, and they say it's roughly 25% done. The team is
we only have 3 more years to go.
Exactly. The team is about double the size of that worked on the original Dark Souls.
Okay.
Graphics have been substantially overhauled to be more realistic. The game world is roughly the same size as the original game, but it is not set in Lordran. Mechanics such as the Covenant system are being overhauled to make them easier to understand.
Ooh.
Time and the passage of time are important to the game. We're not exactly sure what this might mean from gameplay, but it's something that's been speculated is maybe racing against the clock in some situation. There are going to be vehicles, chariots have been mentioned, and there might be some interaction with boats, although it's not clear whether or not you would be in control of the boats or just traveling on them.
I'm on a boat. Sorry, had to.
I actually forgive you for that one.
Okay.
Humanity doesn't, but
Well, those are interesting tidbits. Thanks for running them down. I mean, for me,
Thanks for reading the bullet points.
that was an interesting series of bits of information that you listed in order.
Listen, I want to be clear. It's not like I went out and did the reporting on this or tracked this information down. Okay.
Thanks for reading.
Thanks for reading off a page.
No, but the most interesting thing that stands out to me in that is the mechanic of time, because they're talking about the difficulty in this game and possibly making it more accessible. I wonder if there's if they're exploring how to keep that level of challenge but confine it to an element that isn't as restrictive as the previous elements of the game, meaning that the enemies themselves, the traps, the environments, those things might not possibly be as difficult, but to do it properly or to do things in a manner that is going to provide the ultimate reward is going to involve that same level of tension. Anytime you have a countdown clock, you've got tension, right? So that's what this game is about, providing tension and atmosphere. And I think that time mechanic could actually circumvent some of the things that we've spoken about before in terms of still making it accessible yet challenging.
Right.
Possibly. And there's boats.
and there's boats. I don't know. It sounds very cool. Although, we talked, I think, a little bit before when they first announced it that, they're taking sort of the difficulty level, possibly taking it down a notch. Now I'm wondering if they'll just replace it with, wait here for an hour. Then swing across or something like that. I just,
basically seeing who's really game and who's just
exactly
frozen.
Testing your nerves now.
That's right.
All right. Well, so
interesting.
So something else that's testing the nerves of a lot of people out there is the statement this past week that Naughty Dog is refusing to push the female character of Ellie to the back of the box and have her on the front for The Last of Us, a game coming out next year. DK, what's all the hubbub about?
So, Naughty Dog creative director Neil Druckmann and the voice of the character Ellie, Ashley Johnson, recently did an interview in which they spoke about this topic because apparently the box art was recently released for The Last of Us. And, we're not ones to sit around and critique box art. Obviously, it's something that people talk about, and we've talked about the Bioshock
and we've done it 2 weeks in a row, I think.
We like to think outside of the box here on EBC. But anyway, the point is that apparently at some point in deciding how this was going to shake out, there was some pushback on the current cover, which features main characters Joel and Ellie, with Ellie being in the foreground and being the most prominent character on the front of the box. And the voice of Ellie, Ashley Johnson, as we spoke about, said that she says, quote, "I feel like they don't put women on the covers because they're afraid that it won't sell. It's all gamers really know, and I don't want to be sexist by any means, but I get the feeling generally that they think games won't sell as well with a woman on the cover compared to some badass dude on the front." So, they refused to push it back, push her to the back, and wanted to keep this because obviously Ellie is central to the story. To what degree we don't know the story at this point, basically, but we know that she's central to it and has been one of the icons along with Joel since this game was first revealed at the VGAs last year. So what do you guys think about this, about them standing up and kind of saying, you know what, this has to be the cover, this character is central. We saw a situation where Ken Levine said that, hey, the box art, it's about, it's kind of like salad dressing. It's about selling copies. We know you're following the game, but when it gets onto the retail shelf, it needs to be as sellable as possible for people making a split-second decision or point of purchase decision. What do you feel about the contrast there? Kind of being able to say with Naughty Dog that, you know what, this is our icon and we want her on the cover of the box, no matter that she's a young girl compared to, a brute, badass guy that gamers might more associate with compared to the landscape of artwork that they're used to.
I think it's an incredibly interesting contrast between this and the story we were talking about last week about BioShock Infinite. In both cases, you have a game where you apparently are going to be playing a male protagonist that's going to be involved in some capacity in transporting and protecting a female protagonist, Ellie in The Last of Us, Elizabeth in BioShock Infinite. And it's so interesting to kind of see the take that Ken Levine had on the box art for that game versus what Naughty Dog is saying with The Last of Us. Levine was, and I'm not saying this to disparage Levine, but Levine was essentially saying, look, we've got to face facts, and facts are that, gamers want a certain kind of box art, and so that's what we're going to have, so that we can sell the most copies. And Naughty Dog is like, fuck what everybody thinks is going to sell or what everybody thinks gamers want. We're going to design box art that is going to be emblematic and representative of our game, is going to say something. Just by looking at the box art, it immediately tells you something about this game, which is there are these two characters together, but Ellie is central to the story in ways that we probably don't fully understand yet. And so I think it's a really interesting and instructive sort of contrast to look at the two different approaches to these games, which have so many threads in common. And I really do applaud Naughty Dog for sticking to their guns and for making the box art that they felt best suits their game, not for what's going to sell at retail, but what's going to represent the artistic vision that they have for The Last of Us.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I do agree. I have a couple points with this. First off, what the fuck does box art matter anymore? I mean literally, box art matters not at all. Does anyone ever have a game that they're like, oh god, I can't wait to play this, I can't wait? Is that going to be the cover? Fuck that. I'm not buying that piece of shit.
No, but
or vice versa. I will never play that game. It's the stupid. Look at the cover. Oh my god, I'm gonna get. That never happens. Things that you'll never hear said.
Right.
The other thing that kind of bothers me is I don't like the idea of the way this story kind of comes off is like me coming out there saying like, you know what? I'm against killing baby seals. Like, there's a lot of talk. Like, I was in a conversation recently where a lot of people out there were saying that we should all be killing baby seals, but I'm against that. Like, they're coming out like, hey, like, we're putting out this box art and we're gonna have the woman on the cover. There was talks that we wouldn't be out there, but we're doing it. Like, okay, what, like, who was saying it? Who was telling you shouldn't do it? Like, what market researcher was giving you this info?
But Tony, doesn't the BioShock Infinite story demonstrate that there are people in the game industry that do have these notions of what can and can't?
It had nothing to do with it had nothing to do with a male-female thing.
I'm not saying specific to the female issue. I'm just saying, but isn't it true that there are people in the game industry that have preconceived notions that box art matters at the impulse, for the impulse buyer?
I think the Ken Levine story from last week proves that no one gives two shits about that. All they want to do is, they'll complain about it for a week or so, and that game will sell equally well or poorly as it would have before. I don't think it has any. You know what? I would really love for someone to go out there. I'd like somebody to take a chance and put out a game and put it out with like, let's say, because I'm sure they actually have done this before, put out like two different covers of a game, or like, maybe this one has this cover and you can reverse it and it has this cover, but actually put two different versions of them out on the shelf and let's see which one sells better. And frankly, I'm sure that will change a little bit. Comic books have done that for years. Lots of things have done that for years. And you see certain ones get picked up better than the others. But when the actual content of the game is the exact same, I don't think that just say, like, you take one of those out of the mix, that it really matters to anyone whatsoever. It just is an internet thing to get people up in arms over for a week or so, and then it matters not.
I would say this, just a couple of quick points. The BioShock guys have been offering the community the opportunity to vote on alternate covers that they could download and do whatever. So, they're kind of trying to kill two birds. They're trying to please everyone, I guess. Whereas
which is always a great idea.
It's just publicity,
right? Which is never really a great idea. But we should point that out, and also that the Naughty Dog people are more just like, this is it. But I would say, TG, to just real quickly refute your point, is that there is a large demographic of people who don't know what they're going to buy when they go into a store. Case in point, I work in the industry. I know a lot about what's out there, and I know a lot of stuff
that's not.
Let's not over exaggerate.
Yeah.
No, but I recently went, I was Christmas shopping and I was looking for something for my kids. And while I play mostly Xbox 360 and PS3 and stuff like that, I don't really play the DS, like hardly ever. But I was looking at possibly buying something for my son for DS. And I've heard, obviously, about a lot of the games. But there is that moment when I'm looking around the store and I'm looking for something that looks interesting as I'm thinking of my son. And I'm thinking, I did not go into the store thinking at all about Professor Layton, but I looked at the box and I said, oh, okay, well, let me look at this. And I read the box. So it does have a form of messaging because as minuscule as that is for me, there's a larger demographic of people who go in looking for Xbox 360 games to buy as gifts or to buy, I kind of don't know what I want, but I want a shooter or I want they generalize, I want a sports game. So the box, that point of purchase thing, does make a difference in that regard. I do believe it does. I don't think it's a zero factor. I don't think it's a gigantic factor, but I do think it is a factor.
You may have a point to a certain degree there, but I would also argue, though, that same point that the box art can make an impact on what someone purchases basically also means that no matter what you do, you're playing to a different audience. So let's say that they say, well, if we have a woman on the, or a girl on the cover of a piece of art, that means that may be just as likely to appeal to an audience that it didn't appeal to before with whatever other box art they were going to make. And you could argue that, more men or more males play video games maybe than women possibly. I don't know. I'm just saying you could make that argument, I guess, and then say, well, they tend to lean towards having that. But I also think that if you don't have the hot chick that's playing Lara Croft on the cover of the Tomb Raider game, that's a huge mistake if you don't do that. If you don't play towards whatever is the point of the game.
Yeah, like if you don't represent the product.
If you don't like for instance, you either go
like Brutal Legend.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, in my opinion, you either go one way or the other. You either go sort of abstract, and you choose something that maybe still kind of embraces like maybe a mechanic
Borderlands.
Okay, well, yeah, like Borderlands. Honestly, that's a pretty good. Yeah. I mean, it still does kind of show artwork from the game and stuff like that.
It gives you a vibe from the game.
Well, I was even going to say, like, I've always loved like these websites that'll take Japanese covers of games and American covers of games. And it's one of those things where I typically, on average, much prefer the Japanese version of the game. Like, for whatever reason, they sometimes go more simplistic, where they'll have, like, a white cover with Final Fantasy, 7 on it, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then, you have ours where it has all the artwork and stuff. And I'm like, hey, you know what? That, to me, is a little classier, is a little cooler. But it doesn't mean that game comes out over here and I don't buy it because of it. I would agree. I was being a bit funny, but I do agree that there's probably a smaller percentage that does. I don't think it is probably that big. I really don't think that there are that many people out there that would buy a mature rated title, let's say, that are going to be basing it off of the artwork from the front of the thing. The stuff you're talking about, I could see more often, more for, kids games and things like that, because that is the type of audience that a parent might be going into to buy something for someone that doesn't really know much about video games. In the case in point where you were buying a video game.
Well, also the price point. I mean, let's face it. How many people sort of impulse buy or go into a store and they're like, I'm just going to buy some $60 game. I have no idea what. Paying what we do for video games now. It seems to me that most people go into a store with some pretty well-defined ideas of what they want to spend their money on.
At that price point especially, and then as you get cheaper, I would agree that it gets a little more like, well, we just want something kind of like this. I'll give you that. That is a very, very fair and valid point.
Well,
good job.
It's an interesting conversation and lots of different angles to the discussion. I think that we definitely got it covered.
Thank you. That was delightful. Merry Christmas to me.
Merry Christmas. All right, guys, we're here in the main topic this week, and something we'll lead into a little later. This is gonna be the last Epic Battle Cry for this year. I mean, maybe for the rest of time. Let's be honest.
If those Mayans have their way.
Those bastards.
Those bastards in their calendar that ends. So we wanted to talk a little bit about, the 2012 year in review, a little bit about some of the titles, some of the stories, some of the things that have happened over this past year, and look back on it a little bit. So DK, you want to kind of get us started with a couple of things that stood out to you?
every year there's always big bullet points, talking points, things that that define the year in our industry of interactive entertainment. So I thought it'd be fun if we kind of go down the line and bring out a couple of these keywords, things that kind of represented 2012 from a gaming standpoint, from a news standpoint, and kind of get a quick synopsis of everyone's thoughts and what these particular words mean to us. So one of the biggest stories, one of the biggest words of the year, and we'll go around the horn, starting with you, Brent, and then Tony, and I'll circle back. But what are your thoughts, Brent, on the word Kickstarter?
I think that Kickstarter played an incredibly important role in the game industry this year, and the effects of that aren't going to really be felt until next year when we see the kind of the fruits of those crowdsourced projects, some of the really high profile ones, like Double Fine, like the Ouya, and maybe some of the higher profile games like the Banner Saga or Republic. So I think that Kickstarter was a big deal this year, just in terms of getting people aware of crowdsourcing and all of that. But I think that the jury's still out on what the ultimate effect of that is going to be. Once we start seeing some of the games and products coming out and see how well they've done, I think that's when we'll really kind of know whether Kickstarter is going to continue to be around.
TG?
Yeah, I have a pretty different take on Kickstarter. Like I do think that it was a huge part of gaming this year. My thing is I'm very cautious about its future. Like, I do think that there's a definite potential for it to, a lot of these projects that have been paid into over this past year, we're going to be hopefully seeing this next year. There have been, though, in the last, especially like in the last couple of weeks, there have been a couple of stories about different projects that maybe didn't quite make good on their promises. Granted, some of them are a little bit smaller. There's a recent story about one that they had taken in a lot of Kickstarter funds and then basically put out a kind of a beta version of the game that did make good technically on what they promised, but really wasn't in the spirit of what kind of I think people expected that they were putting in for. And now is trying to get funds from bigger like investors, to actually get the rest of the game made to then sell. So I don't know. I really worry that this next year could actually is either going to be hey, you know what, Kickstarter is definitely the crowdsourcing way is definitely going to be the future, but I also kind of think that it could turn out that it's going to be one of those downsides of the is that maybe hey, Kickstarter works for a couple of projects, but not necessarily for the hundreds of projects that were talked about this past year.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you guys. I mean, I think that in a nutshell, for me, Kickstarter, there was 2011, and Kickstarter, I think it was still existed, but in the gaming realm, what this did this year was break down that barrier of that relationship that was mandatory. It was a necessity to have a publisher in order to reach the consumer of your product. Kickstarter and what we saw with Double Fine and what we've seen with other entities, they have the ability now to go directly to the consumer and to pitch a project and hopefully have it funded to the point of being developed. And whether or not, like you guys are pointing out, Kickstarter is indeed the platform in which that all of those things will live and thrive, I don't know. I think we've already seen other platforms specific to gaming and other platforms of crowdfunding in general crop up. But in my mind, now that mentality has been ushered in, it's something that it just can't go away. It's always going to factor in. It's going to factor into the negotiations when a developer is talking to a publisher, because they now have that card in their deck.
Well,
so
but I think that could change drastically if this next year, if a significant portion of the big projects have major issues, let's say. I think that if they work out, then absolutely it has the impact that you're talking about. But let's say that they don't. Let's just say that the pessimist in me is right, and we have more of them not come through on their promise than fewer. And I think that maybe it doesn't become. Maybe actually when more major investors kind of come back in the fold and say see, here's the downside of you investing your money. But yeah, we'll see. Next year's gonna be definitely interesting for Kickstarter.
Right. All right, so let's move on to another thing. There's a big talking point this year, and that is the game for Walking Dead, The Walking Dead, Telltale's game. What do you guys think that meant for the industry this year?
I will give you guys a little preview of the next episode of the Axe Factor, which is going to be Lauren and I talking about our games of the year. And I'm telling you right now that The Walking Dead is probably going to be my game of 2012. I finished it just recently, as I was kind of talking about. Yes. Spoiler! I finished it just recently, as I was kind of, we were talking about it on the show in relation to the VGAs. But I think that what The Walking Dead did is incredibly significant. Taking a relatively simple, straightforward game mechanic. It's not anything complex, but basically taking the medium of gaming and trying to push it into a realm of really deeply compelling narrative and character. I think I don't think it can be overstated how significant I think that is. And when we talk about that whole difference between uppercase AAA games and lowercase AAA games, The Walking Dead to me is the poster child for that lowercase AAA game. Those games that don't have that unlimited funding of a big studio, but are making incredibly compelling games despite that lack of money.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with what you just said. I mean, it's a fantastic game that has done quite a few things slightly different than the norm. The way they released it and the different chapters as they released it. Then kind of releasing that compilation just here recently. Using the more simplistic graphic style, kind of using a lot of different things that might have played against another title, but I think it was the perfect time for this game. Like, I think if it had come out at a lot of different times, it could have maybe gotten lost in things out there. But just with the popularity of the show, the popularity of the comic book, popularity of the game, and the fact that
platform.
Exactly. And the fact that it was a solidly good game, had a huge part about it. So definitely very, very, very cool.
Yeah, and I think that, this is, as we said last week, as this won the VGA Game of the Year, a defining moment for developers to be able to know that they're not beholden to having to go after that AAA Call of Duty, Gears of War, level of development in order to deliver something that is both critically acclaimed and, lucrative from a consumer standpoint, because this game it's got all those elements, and it was kind of the perfect storm. But more importantly, it showed that at its core, it is interactive entertainment. It doesn't have a robust slate of mechanics. It's not, the most intricate game in terms of there's character customization and all the things that we've come to associate with depth in gaming. But what it does do is it provides an interactive entertainment experience that is really, out of the games coming out this year, was the most emotionally engaging, something that you felt really, and I think part of that is the platform it was on, like being able to play it anywhere, and now it's coming out when it's already had the buzz, but definitely a defining game for 2012, and I think very justified in being game of the year. But
the one last little tiny points I got on those, I don't necessarily know though that this is like the start per se of a trend in terms of the game and the way it did it. I do think that it is starting the trend of the fact that smaller games, kind of smaller concepts, can get huge results. But I think a lot of times they look at and say, like, can we get that again? And I don't know that they can do it the same way that this did it. It's just the fact that you can at least get your foot in with a smaller title.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, another huge story this year was Nintendo's launch of the Wii U, which was anticipated for a long time and came out. And boy, I mean, how do you guys think that story went, and what's the takeaway of where Nintendo stands as we get ready to enter 2013?
It's hard for me to be optimistic about the Wii U, just because I don't see the Wii U really appealing to, or at least not yet, where we stand right now. I don't see it having anything that really appeals to the traditional Nintendo fan base, and I don't see it being enough to draw people in from the quote-unquote sort of hardcore mainstream gaming crowd that normally plays on the 360 or the PlayStation 3. It seems like with the Wii U, to me, that Nintendo tried to please everybody, and they might end up pleasing nobody. But as has been pointed out, and correctly pointed out by some of our listeners in the past, Nintendo, there's probably no company that people have bet against more than Nintendo, and they're still here, and they're still making games and still making hardware. So I'm not saying that portends any kind of downfall of Nintendo, but at where I stand right now, I really don't know what the Wii U is going to end up doing.
Yeah, I really am sort of in the same boat with Brent there. It's I've always been a big fan of Nintendo, mostly of their properties. Their hardware has always kind of been, I think, their weak spot, at least in terms of home consoles. They're really in portables as well, but they've done enough that it kind of made it work. The Wii U, and in all honesty, I get this out up front. I still haven't played it. It's still updating from when I bought it when it launched. So as soon as that's done, I might, could completely change my opinion.
Sometime after the new year.
But in all fairness, like I don't know, I really, it has definitely underwhelmed me so far, and I really feel like it's them searching for something to do to stand out, when what they should be doing to stand out is just taking the properties that they have that people love and putting them in as many hands as possible. I don't personally think that's putting them on all of the platforms that are available out there, like the Xbox, PS3, things like that.
Sure.
But I do sort of think that, maybe they should have gone a little more conservative, or at least a little more mainstream with their hardware this time around. I think that would have... I personally think that would have been a much better play. Not safer, better. Just I think that would have played to their strengths better. But we've got the deck that they've handed us right now, so we'll have to see what they do with it.
Yeah, and I think the Wii U, I think the biggest disappointing sign to me about the Wii U is that I have not had one iota of a desire to get it for my kids for Christmas, for myself as a gamer. I mean, like, yeah, I kind of want to play the new Mario game, and there's maybe a couple of other things. There is zero that is pressing my buttons to say you need to have that. And and I think the thing about the Wii was it's that it offered that different type of experience, something that was the unknown. That was, oh well, maybe I just need to give this a try, because I envisioned my more casual gaming friends coming over and having fun with it. And that's exactly what happened. We had different, brain age parties, and my aunt played, Wii Sports and all that type of stuff. And it offered something that was truly unique. And I think when you're following up on that, unless you're clearly saying, hey, we're releasing this new next gen console that's just about this, and then we'll follow up with something else later. I think a lot of the marketing of it, and people don't know what to expect, and then it's just kind of there. It felt very, very flat to me. And I'm not saying, like you mentioned, Brent, that Nintendo's dead in the water. By no means. They definitely have every resource available, and the brain power and capacity and brands to survive a maybe a misstep in the hardware realm. But when we look back on 2012, it comes across to me the Wii U is more of a what could have been type of story, as opposed to what is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's pretty much the PlayStation Vita also.
Yeah.
Yes. In a nutshell, that is the PlayStation Vita.
Very, very similar.
But that's life.
But that is life.
But bump.
I get it. So let's, obviously there's not a ton of time. There's so many things to talk about. I mean, everything from the rise of, the resurgence, I should say, of PC gaming to, MMOs like Guild Wars 2 and Minecraft, and even League of Legends was a huge story this past year in terms of the esports. Quickly,
what about Journey? What about like art house games like Journey? Like that was a big thing too.
That kind of is in the same vein as Walking Dead. I mean, in terms of showing that you don't need to have those AAA blockbusters. But that was definitely a huge story this year. Journey for sure.
Yeah, for me, I know that Journey was a huge game to Lauren. It's a huge game for me, and similar to The Walking Dead, to me, Journey is one of those games that shows us where the medium can go. That it can be about more than just body count, reload, body count, reload. Journey is one of those games that I think really challenges people to look at gaming as a entirely different kind of medium than in what it started at, and gives us a glimpse of where it can go in the hands of really creative artists.
Yeah, absolutely. Another big story, real fast, the last one I think we'll touch on, is just the kind of, there's been a lot of people departing their posts in gaming. And I think, when we saw, Cliff Bleszinski leaving Epic and other people leaving Epic, or Rod Ferguson, transitioning over to Irrational, or the doctors leaving BioWare, it just seemed like this year, 2012, was kind of a landmark year. I don't know what the right word is, but it was definitely
mass exodus.
Mass exodus or monumental, in that I don't know if these things were plotted for a long time and they all just happened to occur at the same time, or if it indicated to me kind of that this industry is very intense. And when you're working on projects and working on things so intently for such a long time, that, that fuse is a lot shorter possibly than other industries. And that you get burnt out and that you need a fresh start, or you need to just step away and you need to do something completely different. What did these departures say to you guys about, leading a game company, being in this position of prominence and carrying that torch and ultimately just walking away?
I'll be honest with you. I think it to me is more, was it a problem with, where they were? Did they feel like maybe the games they're putting out maybe were not exactly what they wanted to do, or, whatever? Or is it just, I kind of think in some ways it might just be the economy. I mean, things are changing, and I think a lot of people are just sort of looking
Thanks,
at maybe
George Bush.
things, 4 years later and still small. I really do wonder that it couldn't have a lot to do with a lot of different things. It kind of made me think of another sort of, not exactly directly related, but just another story in terms of how like gaming was affected by other things that affect just us in our normal days, which is the fact that retail game sales took a dip this year for the first time in I think 10 years or something like that. And that digital distribution has kind of been taken over. It kind of makes me think that things are just changing in gaming significantly in terms of how they're bought, how they're sold, how they're developed, how they're marketed, how everything is done. And so a lot of these people that have been huge kind of, pillars, I guess, in the industry in some areas, maybe they're just a little tired of it. Maybe they want to move on. Maybe they want to try something different. Maybe they actually feel that it's a good thing. And maybe they're like, hey, you know what? Let's not get tied down to what we've been doing for the last 10 or 15 years. Let's move on to new things. I just don't know.
Yeah. What do you think, Brent?
I think that honestly, it is probably, it's just where people are in their lives. I think that it's got something to do with how old these people were when they kind of came into the industry, what the industry was like then, and then the amount of time that they've spent there, and just as we're kind of going to be moving into a new console generation, all of these people at various stages in their lives, they've gotten into this, they've been involved, and they've been industry drivers in some cases, really pushing the industry forward. And that's the thing. I think that you do that for so long, and then you start kind of wanting a different challenge. You want to do something else. You want to move on to challenge yourself in a new way. That's just part of life, and it just so happens that that's sort of coinciding with all of these changes that gaming as an art form, as an industry, is sort of going through at the same time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's going to be, I think as interesting as 2012 ended up being, a lot of the stuff was surprising. And I think that in the year ahead, 2013, we kind of have expectations. What are we going to see hardware-wise? What are we going to see from crowdfunding? What are we going to see? New people, new projects, new IPs. There's definitive things that we're looking for. How will Nintendo, continue to make the Wii U, or make the Wii U relevant? As exciting as 2012 was, if we don't all die this week because of the Mayan calendar thing, I think the sky's the limit for excitement and stories in 2013.
Yeah, I definitely feel like 2012 was like that end of a console generation type of year. It was like the games that we saw were kind of the pinnacle of the kind of current generation. People were taking chances. People are doing new things. We saw great examples of absolutely every kind of genre out there. I feel like it's just one of those years where, this was the year that showed us the stuff that was probably as good as it could be with what we're working with now. Next year is probably, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little apprehensive that next year is going to be not a letdown by any means, but it's going to be that kind of like that new exciting, hey, the hardware is new. Here's some new concepts around things that we're going to do online with social and all sorts of stuff. But the actual games that are going to be great aren't going to be there till maybe the year after or the year after, so.
Probably so.
But it's still, I'm looking forward to next year because I'm so sick and fucking tired of this current console generation.
And probably by that time you'll still be waiting for your update to finish.
I probably will be. Well, let's be honest, we won't be. All right, guys, well, we are coming up near the end of this week's Skirmish, but first we have our Battle Cries of the week, and I'm going to start off with my Battle Cry, which goes out to something that I've mentioned once before, but I thought it was kind of worth mentioning right now, the Neo Geo X system. That's the little portable Neo Geo system that's being put out that you can actually like plug into an actual like little Neo Geo console and play it on your TV, and some really cool things. That is actually shipping technically as of today, the day we're recording. So like, for those of you that have purchased them, have ordered them for Christmas gifts, things like that, the world's ending in 4 days, so too bad. So, but if, if it doesn't end, yeah. But if it does, the aliens will get to play some great great SNK titles if you order them. And if not, I have seen a lot of places have them in stock and ready to ship too. So if you put off on getting it, you definitely can pick one up. But very cool news there. I'm really excited. I'm a huge SNK fan, so very exciting news to see those shipping. Brent, what's your battle cry this week?
My battle cry this week goes out to The Walking Dead. We've talked a lot about it today and last week as well. The reason I bring it to you now is because Telltale Games actually has the first episode of The Walking Dead free on iOS for a limited time. If you
That's crazy awesome.
Have an iOS device and you have not played The Walking Dead, you've been curious about it, maybe you're not ready to pull the trigger on the $30 box release for Xbox or PlayStation 3, download Episode 1 on your iOS device and check it out. I'm going to check it out just because I'm really kind of curious to see what I played it on PC and a little bit on PlayStation 3, so I'm kind of curious about what the experience of playing this game on say, like the iPad will be. So I'm going to check it out, and I just wanted to let everybody know that they can check it out as well. We don't know when this sale is going to stop. We're kind of thinking maybe around the first of the year. But anyway, it is for a limited time, so if you've got any interest in The Walking Dead, snap it up and see what you think.
That's all.
I totally agree, and I just want to say, those guys have handled this launch and this game so amazing. Think about releasing the first in episodic fashion. It's accessible. Then they do the retail release where it bundles everything, and then over the holidays, when people are talking about it, they put the first episode out for free, so you could just jump in and play it. I mean, it's not that hard to be good at marketing, and these guys are friggin' knocking it out of the park. Everyone, look at these guys, and this is how you should market your games.
I agree. I agree. They've done a fantastic job.
All right. Well, DK, what's your battle cry this week?
Well, my battle cry this week, I wanted to just use this opportunity to tell everyone, I don't have anything specifically gaming related, but it is our last episode of the year. It's our 175th episode. I wanted to say thank you to the two of you and everyone involved in Epic Battle Axe. It's been a year of transition for Epic Battle Axe, and I think we've landed in a really awesome place on epicbattleaxe.com. But I wanted to say thank you to everyone involved in this show, to GameTrailers for picking up the show and featuring us and whatnot. But more importantly than our little world, I wanted to just take a second to encourage everyone to enjoy their families, their friends, and just some time over the holiday season to do what is really most important, and that is to just be involved with other people that are in your life. I think that we, again, this isn't gaming related, but this is the last episode of the year, and it's kind of just what I wanted to use my battle cry for. We have a very connected world with technology, but I think it's made us very disconnected at the same time because people don't actually make eye-to-eye contact and talk to each other and communicate and truly ask people how they're doing. So I just wanted to use my battle cry that if you're in the earshot of my voice and hearing all of my puns throughout the show and you've made it this far, then
you haven't murdered yourself yet.
Yes, totally. I totally want to encourage everyone to have a great holiday, to think about people in their lives, to spend time with them, and to go out of their way to make sure that other people know that you're there for them, they're there for you, and let's bring a little love, joy, and peace into the world during the holiday season, especially after what's been happening lately with the tragic events. So that's my battle cry, and I hope everyone does it.
All right. Good message.
I have no idea what game footage is playing right now, but I'm very excited to find out.
It should be just like kittens like frolicking in snow or something.
Yeah, you should totally do it.
All right, well, so our member battle cry comment comes from Talus12, and he gave us this response in response to our conversation about the Game of the Year announcement at the VGAs for The Walking Dead. And he says, personally, I think there are a couple of reasons why budget games stand a chance now. One is because graphics seem to matter less these days. Almost all games have reached their graphical peak, especially since current-gen consoles are maxed out. Secondly, I think fatigue is setting in with gamers. Everyone is sequel sick. They want something new, something different. Indie games provide that. Thirdly, AAA titles are moving more and more towards movies, with their stories, the action scenes they put in, the voice work being done, etc., etc. While indie titles often go back to their roots and bring back the fun and challenge in a game, fun still is the core of a game. And lastly, the industry keeps saying that B titles have disappeared and that only AAA titles and indie titles exist now. I personally think that indie games have become the B titles. Indie games have raised the bar in the last few years, and there are quality games coming out. The indie scene has just figured out how to create the same quality titles as the B titles, but on a lower budget. Soon, indie games are the AAA titles for only a fraction of the developing cost. In fact, some games already are. So I think it's a very good point. I mean, he's kind of saying that, basically the games that, kind of used to be the sort of underdogs or the smaller games that have the smaller budgets, in some cases, those are becoming the ones that get just as much, if not more attention than those games that are, billions of dollars are pumped into. So.
Yeah. No, totally agree. And the reason behind that is things like digital distribution and crowdfunding. Hopefully, eventually will further that. But definitely second that battle cry. And I think that, that to me, when the playing field becomes more level, it's at the benefit of the gamer. It's at the benefit of people who are passionate about the medium, whatever that medium is, because what becomes the focal point is true creativity and innovation and progress and people that relate to those things. So I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. Very good comment. All right. Well, so that is going to do it for this year's skirmishes.
Hey.
I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, and please join us once again next year when we will be, cleaving the fat from the gaming stories of the day if we don't die.
Yeah.
In
if
the,
we don't
the apocalypse that is the Mayan calendar ending.
That's right.
Yes. So I think it's January. What did we say, Brent? January
10th. 10th.
January 10th.
We'll see you guys again in 2 weeks on January the 10th, after the Christmas holiday, after the New Year. And everybody have a wonderful holiday, a safe New Year, and we'll see you in 2013.
Booyah! Peace, biatches. Music. Cue the music. Oh, yeah, that's some heavy metal riff. Oh, feels so good. Going into 2013, lucky number 13. Oh, yeah.
Where are your hands right now?
I'm actually air guitaring. Did you envision that? Because that's what's happening.
No, that's not what I envisioned, but I'm very relieved to hear that's what you're doing.